8 Sleep makes a product that is amazing, which I love. It's called the Pod, and it fits around your existing mattress and cools down your bed so you can sleep better. They just released the newest model called the Pod 4 Ultra, which in addition to cooling down or heating up your bed, can even lift up your head when you're snoring so you can breathe better. It's incredible. To get $350 off, go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman. The link is in the description. Well, if you're hearing me right now, it's because you made it, we made it to Debate Week 2024. Again, with the candidates that, as far as we know today, will be on the November ballot. Tomorrow night, we will see the first and probably only debate between the Democratic presidential nominee, the current Vice President, Kamala Harris, and the failed former president and perennial Republican presidential nominee of sorts, Donald Trump. One thing we must acknowledge is that if you look at the polls today, it seems as though Kamala Harris's convention bump has peaked, the polls have reversed, and it is now Donald Trump who is benefiting from some momentum. Now, I know some of you will be mad at me. One of the things that's unfortunately too common in this wacky world of online political discussion is a knee-jerk reaction to attack the messenger. When I said, you know, guys, I don't know that Biden can win anymore. I think the pressure is such that he's going to step down. Even though this was merely me objectively delivering what was pretty apparently true, many in my audience were furious. How dare I acknowledge this? I'm part of the problem. I don't know why I sound like Alex Jones. Socialists. And all I was doing was communicating what was going on. And likewise, we saw a reversal in the polling in Kamala Harris's favor, going from losing the national polling to winning by a fraction of a point, to winning by a point, to winning by a point and a half, to winning by almost 2 points. And now we have seen things decidedly reverse. In the national polling, Donald Trump has gained back half a point. And if you look at the trend lines, we look at the trend lines. Where does the red and blue line go? Line go up, line go down. And we have seen a reversal where Kamala Harris's polling seems to be coming back down. Donald Trump's is going up. Concurrently, Nate Silver's forecast gives Trump the top odds of winning in November that he has had since Kamala Harris became the presumptive nominee. So this is a reversal. Now, as many of you know, and for those of you that don't know, I'll tell you, the American presidential election doesn't depend on the national popular vote. I wish it did, but it does not. We have an electoral college, and most likely this is an election that will come down to 100,000 to 250,000 votes in 3 to 5 states. Those states are likely to be the following states, and I will tell you what the polling looks like in those particular states right now, because I'll be honest with you, whether Kamala Harris wins by 1, 5, 15, or 25 in California, she's going to get California's electoral votes. It's baked in. It's not going to affect the outcome of this election. On the other hand, Arizona just might. You might remember that in 2020, President Biden won Arizona. Well, Donald Trump is building a lead in Arizona now by an average of 1.6 points. That would be a change from 2020, a state that Trump lost then, that he is potentially on track to win right now. In Nevada, where Biden won, Harris is holding a lead, but it's half a point. Oh boy. In Wisconsin, which Biden won, Harris has a 1.5 lead, and that's sort of looking okay. Michigan, Harris with more than a 1 point lead. That's looking okay. But Pennsylvania, which Joe Biden did win in 2020, is a flat out tie. You've got a couple polls that have it as a flat tie, a couple that say Trump are winning, one that says Harris is winning, although it appears to be an outlier. Pennsylvania is currently tied. North Carolina, Trump has a lead. I'll tell you, the fact that North Carolina is in play is very good for Kamala Harris and not so good for Donald Trump. Georgia right now, Harris is winning by 1/10 of a point. That's a state that Joe Biden won. And right now, the Real Clear Politics map has it as a win for Harris, but barely. A win for Harris with only 273 electoral votes. The change here from 2020 is that RCP is currently giving Arizona and Pennsylvania to Trump. Those are two states that Joe Biden won in 2020. If you start with this map, you very quickly see, well, if Georgia were to go Trump, that means Trump wins. If Nevada were to go Trump, that means that Donald Trump wins. If Michigan were to go Trump, that means that Donald Trump wins. Now, of course, there is still very much a possibility that Harris carries Pennsylvania. That's a much better scenario for Trump. But needless to say, that's the scenario in which it could actually end up coming down to New Hampshire, which we've talked about before. So what is the point here? The point is not, wow, we're going to lose. No, the point is also not, hey, guys, it's over. Kamala Harris has got this. We don't have to call anybody. We don't have to ask people, hey, by the way, you're planning to vote, right? No, the scenario is whatever the momentum felt like in those first 10 days of Kamala Harris, you've got to forget about that. And you have to recognize that Republicans have dirty tricks up their sleeve. We have an electorate in this country that, I'm so sorry I have to say this, there are a lot of really ignorant people welcoming the propagandizing that is going on. They're like, I don't know, should I vote for the one who has the middle class genuinely in mind, or the civilly liable rapist convicted felon who only has himself in mind and giving discounts on taxes to its rich donors and humiliates us on the world stage? There's people who are actually saying, I don't know what I would pick between those two options. I'm sorry. These are really wacky people, but that doesn't mean they can't get Trump elected again. So that's where we are right now. Plus 1.9 may have been the peak for Kamala Harris that we talked about post-convention. She's backed off of that lead by about half a point. What we now wait for is tomorrow night's debate. And of course, the downside risk to both candidates, if tomorrow goes really poorly for either candidate, that could very much shake up the polling. All right, in Florida, they are doing it. There is, as many of you know, an abortion ballot initiative in Florida. And what the DeSanctimonious administration is doing is they are, quote, reviewing signatures of those who said, yes, I want this on the ballot. They are reviewing those signatures to see if those signatures are really valid, or if the entire ballot initiative is none other than supposed fraud, as Donald Trump likes to say. This is very serious. The Tampa Bay Times reports, DeSanctimonious administration reviewing abortion amendment petitions for, quote, fraudsters. 2 election supervisors say the state's request is highly unusual. Florida's Department of State is examining thousands of petition signatures that were used to get the abortion amendment on November ballots, saying they are looking for fraud. In a move that supporters of the amendment fear could be political interference, Governor Ron DeSantis' Deputy Secretary of State has asked supervisors in Hillsborough, Orange, Palm Beach, and Osceola counties to gather roughly 36,000 signatures for the state to review. These were among the nearly 1 million signatures collected and verified by local supervisors as belonging to real Floridians to permit Amendment 4 to be before voters in November. This is an amendment which would protect abortion access, and it would undo that 6-week abortion ban that DeSantis supported. Whether the request could be used to challenge the amendment or strike it from the ballot is not clear. A deadline in state law to challenge the validity of the signatures has long passed. So I'll give you the upside and the downside. The upside is challenging 36,000 signatures when there were 1 million after the deadline for challenging has already passed is not likely to remove this amendment, this ballot initiative from the ballot. It's not likely. Okay, well, that's the upside. The downside is these people have no moral code, no ethical boundaries. Whatever they believe are the appropriate ends, they will justify any means to get there. And the ends they believe are appropriate are no abortion, 6-week ban, stop all of it. That's the end that they believe is appropriate. And therefore, they will substitute in or accept any means necessary in order to get to what they believe is the correct ends. And I don't yet know. And this is why this is so scary and why we have to pay attention to it. The deadline for challenging it has passed. So what are they going to do? There's 1 million signatures. What is looking at 36,000? Some fraction of which maybe they could argue were fraudulent, although we have no evidence of that right now. That's not going to do anything, right? Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, except we know what these people do. And we know that they are doing this for a reason. So I wish I could tell you exactly what they had planned, other than in general, they would love to get that ballot initiative off the ballot. I will keep an eye on this. I encourage you to do the same, and we'll see what it is that they are planning to do. Let's take a break. We have such a packed show for you today. I will be live with the debate tomorrow night, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I hope you'll join me. Our sponsor, 8 Sleep, is the creator of the Pod, which can be added to your existing mattress like a fitted sheet to automatically cool down or warm up each side of your bed, and in turn improve your sleep quality dramatically. Meet their newest model, 8 Sleep's Pod 4 Ultra. It cools, it heats, and now it can elevate your head automatically. Pod 4 Ultra can cool down each side of the bed to 20 degrees below room temperature, keeping you and your partner cool even in a heat wave. The pod can even detect your snoring and automatically lift your head by a few degrees to improve that airflow and stop your or your partner's snoring. There is nothing else like it on the market. I've been using 8 Sleep products for a long time, and it's one of the few things in my house that I couldn't go without now. Pod 4 Ultra also introduces an adjustable base that fits between your mattress and your bed frame to add reading and sleeping positions to help you unwind at night. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman to get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra. The link is in the description. The David Pacman Show, of course, depends on your support, not Russian money. I'll say more about that later. Your support to do what we do. The primary means of such support is the membership program. You can find the membership program at joinpacman.com. It's quick, it's easy, it comes with great perks and benefits like the daily bonus show and commercial-free audio and video streams of the show. And I invite you humbly to sign up at joinpacman.com. You can use the coupon code, at least for the next 9 weeks or so, SaveDemocracy24. Use the code, get the discount, and support the work that we do. Really appreciate all of our new and existing members over the many, many years. Donald Trump spoke to the Economic Club of New York late last week, and his brain shut down when asked a simple question: how will you make childcare more affordable? Trump's brain completely malfunctioned, and one of the scariest parts of this is there were people in the room that clapped. This is not a room of stupid people in terms of their understanding of economics, at least. And Trump could not put together a coherent sentence, never mind a coherent idea. And it was one of the most humiliating moments of the 2024 campaign. You will see Trump's brain shut down in real time. Look at this.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so
it's already off the rails.
Impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, right. You have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly.
Trump seems to be saying he will use tariffs on foreign countries, which actually are paid by American corporations to pay for childcare. He doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what he's saying.
And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with...
Remember, he promised that last time. He blew up the deficit.
The reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country, because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about.
Which there is no plan.
We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. The
fact that people in this room are clapping is absolutely terrifying. Tariffs to get childcare? What is this guy talking about? And you know, this is one where if you have a little more humility, if you have a little less ego, even if you don't know the answer, you can save face. You can go, hey, you know what? You're talking about inflation. You're talking about the cost of things. We talk about groceries. We talk about energy. You're talking about inflation to the cost of childcare. I'm still developing a plan. I don't want to spitball here, okay? This is so important because it's about the future of America's children. And so I'm developing a plan. I don't want to give you a half-baked plan. Once the plan is complete, I will have it for you. I don't want to just guess because our children are so important. I didn't give you any more than what Trump gave in terms of what is the plan. But I'm at least telling you, I'm taking this seriously. I'm developing a plan. Now, he always says he's developing a plan. He never puts it out. But it's a better answer than that abortive attempt at using language that Trump experienced there. And that wasn't even necessarily the worst answer. Trump was asked sort of a wonky policy question. In this answer, it's not just that Trump doesn't know what he's saying. Trump doesn't know what the question is. Look at this.
Mr. President.
Hi, John.
First, let me thank you for your presentation today. President Trump, in the last fiscal year, the fiscal deficit under the Biden administration was approximately $2 trillion. Under the policies you've announced, the deficit would come down from items such as increased revenues from tariffs, as well as eliminating the tax incentives for the Green New Deal.
By the way, understand that the premise of the question is false anyway, because when it's actually been reviewed, Trump's tariff fiasco would increase the deficit.
These gains would be mitigated by decreases in revenues from policies such as no tax on tips. Overall, what do you estimate will be the impact of the fiscal deficit from your policies?
Okay, so he's asking for a number here.
Well, we just hit record highs at numbers that nobody ever thought possible. You're right, it's over $2 trillion. Nobody thought that was a number that was... I mean, you can go back 4 years. Nobody thought a number like that would be possible. It's crazy. It's like, it's just horrible, actually.
These are just random words, folks.
But yeah, we're $2 trillion, and I view it as profit and loss to a certain extent. A lot of people say, oh, it's trade. You know, you have many people say trade deficits don't matter. I think they matter a lot. We're going to have tremendous growth. What I'm talking about is all about growth. The tax is relatively minor compared to the growth. We're going to make our money back on growth. We're going to also, we're going to grow like nobody's ever grown before. I think if this all works out, you're going to have the auto industry come back to America. Right now, China is building 2 auto factories in Mexico, massive auto factories.
I won't even torture you with the rest of it, the following minute. The question was, what do you believe the net effect on the deficit will be of all these policies? So like an answer, for example, would be, well, the totality of this, when you look at the additions and the subtractions from the deficit, my policies are going to reduce the deficit by 700 billion per year. And that doesn't include the dynamic effect of XYZ. Okay, that's the format of the answer that one is expected to give when they're asked a question like this. Trump doesn't even understand the question. If he did, he certainly wouldn't have an answer. He can't think, folks. He can't do this. Here is Trump bombing. He's just spitting out random words.
And the Arab nations, and we're very honored to have some of my friends here with us today from that part of the world, but they're working very hard despite being here, that I not be your president. They don't like me.
Silence.
Well, Kamala Harris can't bring down the price of anything because her energy policies are driving up the cost of everything. Everything is up, way up. Starting on day one, Harris and Biden opened up the Russian pipeline.
All right. So anyway, he has no idea what's going on. He did tout an endorsement from Kim Jong-un to the New York Economic Club, which didn't really make people in the room particularly happy.
And Viktor Orban, a very strong man. He's the prime minister of Hungary. He said the only thing missing from the world right now is President Trump. He kept the world safe because everybody was afraid of him. I don't like that term, but that's the term he used. I would like to say respected him and respected our country, but he didn't say that. He said everybody was afraid of him. He said China was afraid, Russia was afraid. They were all afraid. Kim Jong-un, I got along great with him. And I try to explain to the fake news media that getting along with people, foreign countries, is a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. It's a smart thing.
There you go. We should all be thrilled that Kim Jong-un likes Donald Trump. And then maybe most bizarrely, as far as economic policy goes, Trump made the promise that he would, quote, ban mortgages for illegal aliens, which was definitely a surprising policy announcement.
We also cannot ignore the impact that the flood of 21 million illegal aliens has had on driving up housing costs. That's why my plan will ban mortgages for illegal aliens in California. They're passing a law that they're going to give illegal aliens money by house. But our soldiers, our veterans are laying on the streets saying how. You have soldiers right now laying on the streets of different cities, all Democrat run. They're laying on the streets in front of hotels, in some cases luxury hotels, and you have illegal immigrants coming in and living in those hotels and laughing at our soldiers.
Yeah, so Trump here is blaming mortgages to undocumented immigrants for the housing crisis that also affects veterans. And I was able to find no evidence that that's actually what is taking place. So a deranged and disjointed speech there. And one of the most depressing things about this is that as unhinged as Trump was, there were media outlets trying to sane wash this. And unfortunately, one of those outlets was the New York Times. The New York Times covered for Donald Trump's completely incoherent answer about childcare and paying for childcare. This is the one we looked at earlier in the show where Trump is asked, how are you going to deal with paying for childcare, bringing down the cost of childcare? Trump talks about tariffs, and also he talks about Marco Rubio and Ivanka. Incoherent in its sum total. Here is how the actual answer went. And we've got a little transcript of it to put up on the screen. I'm not going to play the entire video or read this whole thing, but this is the actual answer from Trump. Well, I would do that. We had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, childcare is childcare. You have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. Okay. And he went on and he dissembled, and it was totally ridiculous. In the New York Times summary of what took place there, a guy named Michael Gold summarized that incident the following way. Quote, after his speech, Donald Trump was asked how he might address rising childcare costs. In a jumbled answer, he said he would prioritize legislation on the issue, but offered no specifics and insisted that his other economic policies, including tariffs, would take care of childcare. And then he includes a little quote about Trump, where he argues childcare is much cheaper than the amount of money that will come in via tariffs. This is a sane washing of what Donald Trump said. This does not give anyone the correct understanding that Trump barely understood the question and spit out random words when answering, including words like Marco Rubio and Ivanka. Now, I know that you might say, David, you're being a little bit hard on Michael Gold. Michael Gold did say the answer was jumbled. Okay, the problem here is that it is still presented primarily as Trump giving an answer. Giving an answer. He did not give an answer. If Biden had given such an answer, it would be a 24-hour loop on right-wing media that the 25th Amendment must be used immediately to remove Biden from office because of cognitive decline, and he can't be the nominee, and he can't tie his shoes, and he can't pick whether he wants ketchup or mustard on his hot dog, okay? Here, instead, we have the answer was jumbled, but he said he would prioritize legislation that includes tariffs. This is a sane washing of what Donald Trump said. And one of the problems is, and I don't want to pick on Michael Gold specifically because this goes more broadly to editorial policy. The problem is that Trump's brain is failing so seriously that you don't really have editorial policies at most of these institutions that account for how do we report about a guy who just about every time he opens his mouth raises questions as to whether he's even remotely here cognitively. So there's a major malfunction here that's taking place. How do we report on it? This isn't it. Now, as an alternative for how we should be talking about this, let's talk about what happened on the 5 with Jessica Tarlov. As is always the case, the lone voice of reason on Fox News' The 5, and that's Jessica Tarlov. She put front and center, Trump's brain is failing, and he was completely incoherent when he spoke to the New York Economic Club. When he was asked, how will you bring down the price of childcare? His answer made no sense. His brain is not functional, and he's completely incoherent, making her co-hosts, all right-wingers, uncomfortable, and they should be uncomfortable because they are supporting the oldest major party presidential nominee in American history whose brain is not working. Here's Jessica Tarlov doing what she does best.
But today was also about Donald Trump's economic speech, and we watched a lot of it. And I would dare any of you to listen to his answer on childcare and tell me what the hell he was talking about. It was one of the more incoherent things I've ever heard. He thinks tariffs are going to pay for everything. We know that they're a tax on the consumer. But this really highlights a big problem that everyone is saying, well, Trump is so transparent and Trump's out there and that's all that matters. What matters is the content of what he's saying. And none of it is explainable. This issue, which is a big priority for people, obviously a central plank of what's going on in the Harris campaign, he doesn't have an answer besides tariffs. And J.D. Vance yesterday was talking about just have grandma and grandpa do more, that's some sort of solution for people. He's going to have energy prices, drill, baby, drill, even though we're producing more oil than we ever have before, leading the world, more tax cuts for the rich, and tariffs are the only way that we're going to be paying for it.
I think tariffs are designed to punish countries who subsidize their products.
But they don't work that way. And
no, for specific countries, they do. Look, I know.
You know what?
I know tariffs.
As is always the case, Greg Gutfeld and who else is on this completely horrifying show? Jeanine Pirro, Jesse Waters, and it looks like Dana Perino. They never are able to contradict what Jessica Tarlov says with substance. So instead they talk around it or they talk tangentially or sometimes they attack her directly. She made the point, and it's an undeniable point, that it was a very specific question. What do you do about the cost of childcare? Trump's answer is incoherent. It's unintelligible. He vaguely refers to tariffs. And of course, tariffs are something that punishes American companies that often have no choice but to go overseas for certain source materials, products, or services. And Greg Gutfeld says, this is about tariffs. Tariffs do work. Here's the point of tariffs. That wasn't really the subject. What Jessica Tarlov is pointing out is Trump's not making any sense. His mouth moves, sounds come out. Most of the words are English, not all, but most. But they don't make any sense together. And the apoplexy over Joe Biden seems to have had a completely different standard than the, I don't know, tariffs. Yeah, that's his idea, when the guy can barely put together a sentence. Good for Jessica Tarlov. If it gets into the brains of 1% of the Fox audience, she's done something good. And what's crazy is the segment they're talking about, Trump's answer about childcare. It wasn't even the most incoherent thing Trump said this past weekend. We're going to get to that after this very short break. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Donald Trump has done a lot of horrible things to lawyers. Not pay them, not shut his mouth and make his cases more difficult for his lawyers. But he did something over the weekend that is really something else. Donald Trump described an alleged sexual assault that he is accused of having participated in as his lawyers just look on in horror. They just look on in horror. Donald Trump potentially opening himself up to further defamation claims against him. It's almost beyond words what Donald Trump did. And if you're watching, keep an eye on the lawyers as he delivers this bizarre speech.
Now, there were two witnesses. One is a woman who's followed me for years. She said in 1979, I was in an airplane with her, commercial flight, and we became very intimate. I just sat down. I think I had the book, The Art of the Deal. I was famous then, too. I've been famous for a long time. And we're sitting in first class, according to her. Never happened, by the way. Totally made up story. She's a Clinton person, too, by the way. Big Clinton person. She made
At this point, his lawyers are panicking.
up the story. And so many years ago, and I think it would be 1979, one of my many people behind me could correct it, but I think she said 1979, that's a long time ago. And I sat down. I believe I had some pretty big success then, and I was being talked about a lot. Maybe The Art of the Deal was out, sometime after that, I'm not sure. But I was well known. And passengers are coming into the plane. And she said, I was making out with her. And then, after 15 minutes, and then she changed her story a couple of times, maybe it was quicker, that I grabbed her at a certain part, and that was when she had enough.
Now, by the way, the real focus here is Trump's recreation of the sexual assault. Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, came out in 1987. So even like everything he's saying it's like off by decades. It's all crazy.
So think of the impracticality of this. I'm famous. I'm in a plane. People are coming into the plane. And I'm looking at a woman and I grab her and I start kissing her and making out with her.
Now, if you're Trump's lawyers, you're thinking, why are you even putting these images in the minds of people? If this is a scenario you want to distance yourself from, you don't go over each detail.
Chances of that happening. What are the chances? And frankly, I know you're going to say it's a terrible thing to say, but it couldn't have happened. It didn't happen. And she would not have been the chosen one.
Right. She's not attractive enough for Trump to sexually assault her, is what he's getting at.
She would not have been the chosen one. She has gone around for years saying the story. Everywhere I go, she says this story. And it's a total lie.
74 million people in this country voted for this guy just a few short years ago. and the same or more may vote for him in the forthcoming election. Wow. As Trump rambled about this individual, this woman, he then doesn't remember her name and like looks for it in his notes but can't find it. And it's just all crazy.
And her name was whoever. Let's see. Her name was who? Swornoff, yeah. I don't have it. Whatever her name was. I don't know the lady, so perhaps it's much better that way. But
yeah, her name is actually irrelevant anyway because I've never met her. And here's a list of 10 things I never did to her. So don't even put those 10 things in your mind. With his lawyers standing behind him during this really strange press conference, Trump said he's really not happy with the work his lawyers are doing.
And I'm disappointed in my legal talent, I'll be honest with you. They're good. They're good people. They're talented people. Today at the trial, they didn't mention the dress. So the Monica Lewinsky type dress was a big part of the trial. Big part of the trial. I said, why didn't you mention that? And I heard there was a dress involved.
Yeah. So Trump saying while out there with his lawyers, he really doesn't like the job that they're doing. And then, of course, despite all of this, Alina Habba, one of Trump's lawyers, comes forward and says she can tell you for sure she's a woman, she's been around Trump, and he certainly hasn't sexually abused her.
And as a woman who has stood with President Trump, who has spent extensive time with President Trump and with his beautiful family, I will tell you that is not President Trump, and I completely am disgusted by what I have seen happen to this person, his family, and the Trump organization that we stand in right now.
You know, it's funny. The fact that there are women he hasn't sexually assaulted is not the greatest evidence that he doesn't sexually assault women. And of course, the testimony and the claims of all the women who say he has sexually assaulted him certainly contradict that. And then so just like a little cherry on top, Trump does mention that tomorrow night's debate against Kamala Harris is going to be rigged against him. I mean, you can't write this stuff.
I'm going into very hostile territory shortly on a debate with ABC, George Slopadopoulos and that group. And ABC, I think, is the worst of everybody. I think they're the worst. They're the nastiest. They're as bad as you can be. They're worse than NBC, which is saying a lot. And we have something coming. And the reason I'm doing it is because that's the only one that she would do it with, because her best friend is the head of ABC or ABC News, and her husband's best friend is married to that one. So, and Donna Brazile is there. You remember the famous Donna Brazile? She gave Hillary Clinton the questions. You remember that? That was a little embarrassing. She got fired, I assume, for that.
All right. So Trump is preparing us that tomorrow night's debate will be rigged, and part of the reason why is it's on ABC. Here's my takeaway. Aside from, boy, these Trump lawyers, I don't know what they're thinking. The debate may be the most anticipated presidential debate, certainly that I can remember. I will be live starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I hope that you'll join me. There was one campaign event that Donald Trump did last week, and it was in Mosinee, Wisconsin. And this is one where Donald Trump promised blood, speaking behind a glass box so thick that now it's reflective and it's hard to even see Trump because you see the reflections of the crowd in front of him. It's crazy now that this is what's going on. Maybe just do indoor rallies, you know, if you're this scared after the shooting incident. And listen, I would be. I mean, I'm not criticizing him for it. It's just the speaking inside of the thick glass box is not going so well. Donald Trump says that when he starts the mass deportations, it will be bloody.
Radicals headed up by a radical governor in Colorado that has no clue how to solve this influx of crime into his state. And by the way, Colorado's one state. It's much worse in other states. But in Colorado, they've taken over. I mean, in Colorado, they're so brazen, they're taking over sections of the state. And, you know, getting them out will be a bloody story should have never been allowed to come into our country. Nobody checked them. Nobody checked, were they criminals? Were they from jails?
Getting them out will be a bloody story. Now, of course, then the Trump suck-ups will start saying, washing this and say, no, he meant bloody metaphorically, and it was sarcasm, and he was joking, and wait a second. So what's the explanation? Tell me again. Here's what Donald Trump really meant when he said, getting them out will be bloody. Trump completely and totally unintelligible in just about every way. Again, talking about Hannibal Lecter during the speech.
And then the press, when I say Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the press says, oh, why did he mention that? They're wise guys back there, just wise guys. They say he rambled and started talking about Hannibal Lecter. What does that have to do? That's a representative of people that are coming into our country. Dr. Hannibal Lecter, he will have you for dinner, you know?
Right. And again, we're still trying to figure out the whole thing. My best guess right now is when Trump talks about people. Well, it's so crazy, but the best thing I figured out is people come to the U.S. seeking asylum. And Trump seems to think that means they are coming from, quote, insane asylums, like Hannibal Lecter in the movie Silence of the Lambs. That's my best guess as to what the hell Trump is talking about at this point in time. I can't do any better than that, but it seems to be what he's referring to. Trump again telling this lie that kids go to school and they get gender affirming surgeries in school.
Can you imagine you're a parent and your son leaves the house and you say, Jimmy, I love you so much. Go have a good day in school. And your son comes back with a brutal operation. Can you even imagine this?
It's hard to imagine because it's not happening. This is not how gender affirming surgery works. You can believe whatever you want to believe about gender affirming care, about individuals who are transgender, about pronouns, about verbs, about adjectives. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But Trump's own campaign was not able to provide a single example of a school secretly sending a kid for gender affirming surgery without parental consent. It's never happened, okay? They couldn't find a single example of it. And experts have said, not only hasn't it happened, it could not happen based on the way gender affirming care works. Trump talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he says Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is so good on medical stuff that he wants RFK on some kind of panel. This is going to be a very scary panel.
We will establish a panel of top experts to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases, including the autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and much more. And Bobby's going to be very much involved in that. We're going to get him involved because that's what he likes. That's what he's great at. Isn't it great to have a Kennedy with us? Isn't that nice? And this is really, I mean, I don't want to disrespect the rest of the family, but this has been the dominant Kennedy for the last 25 years, you know?
Certainly he would like to believe that. Of course, I remember Ted Kennedy more recently than 25 years ago having a pretty significant impact. Yeah, so listen, I don't know what RFK Jr. heading up some kind of medical panel would be like. I don't know if it's raw milk for everybody and no vaccines. They also love to pretend like we have absolutely no idea why we are seeing so much chronic disease when we have a pretty good idea about a lot of elements. Nutrition and, junk food and processed food seems to be one aspect of it. Number two, environmental factors, which the very same people who go, oh, we're having chronic disease, we don't know why. Well, you also don't want regulation for businesses when it comes to pollution. And we know about cancer, alleys, and all of these different things. That's another factor. People living longer in general, even though we've seen this shorter term decline in life expectancy in the United States, tragically, in general, as life expectancy goes up, we move from infectious disease as a cause of death to chronic diseases associated more with living longer rather than premature death. I could go on, but the point is they act like it's a complete mystery and then kind of want to point to vaccines when we have at least an initial framework for what is causing a lot of these problems. Trump glitching and referring to Elon Musk as Leon Musk.
Boeing had a little, I shouldn't say there's a beautiful Boeing plane there, but Boeing had a little hard time, as you heard. So they're going to save, Leon's going to send up a rocket.
Exactly. Leon will soon be sending a rocket up into the air. And then Donald Trump failing when he tried to do his tampon Tim about Tim Walz joke, which is a failed joke anyway. He couldn't quite get tampon.
Her running mate, tampon Tim.
Tampon. It's like, remember Tan Mom? This is tampon, which is a different thing. And then Trump, while speaking behind bulletproof glass, saying that he will defend the Second Amendment. Whoops, I lost the video here. Hold on, let's go back. Here it is.
We'll defend the Second Amendment, restore free speech, and we will secure our elections once and for all.
Right, Trump demanding more guns in the hands of more people whilst he speaks from a box of bulletproof glass. And then finally, apocalyptically, Trump saying, if I don't win, it's going to be very, very bad.
I better win, or you're going to have problems like we've never had. We may have no country left. It may be our last election. You want to know the truth? People have said that. This may be our last election. You got to get out and vote. This could be
Mostly people are saying this might be the last election if Trump wins, which I also find to be hyperbolic, but Trump seemingly misunderstanding that. Scary, apocalyptic, dystopian vision. A stark contrast to the positive vision being articulated by Kamala Harris and by Tim Walz. The hope is that this contrast comes through in tomorrow night's debate and really influences voter sentiment. I will be live starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night for the debate on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. I hope you'll join me. Let's take a quick break, and then I'm finally coming clean about the Russian influencer money scandal. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the Daily Bonus Show, the commercial-free Daily Show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, listen. I'm going to do this because so many of you wrote to me over the weekend. I'm going to come clean and give you the full story of my involvement with the Russian influencer money scandal, which I hope will put to bed any concerns that we are wrapped up in this thing. A bunch of articles like this one were published over the last few days. Unsealed FBI document exposes the terrifying depth of Russian disinformation scheme. This is an article from the New Republic, and it correctly points out that it's not just Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Lauren Chen, Lauren Southern, Benny Johnson, whoever else was named in this Russian influencer cash scandal, that there is a very, very long list of influencers, and it goes well beyond just the ones that made headlines last week. So naturally, naturally, because the world is so crazy, I received a ton of emails over the weekend pointing to this article and others like it saying, David, are you on this list? A lot of these people don't necessarily know that the company they work for is actually funded by Russia. If we believe what Tim Pool and Dave Rubin say, they had no idea that they were getting Russian money and all of this different stuff. So I want to be super crystal clear here on a number of things. Primary question. Am I one of these influencers in some indirect way? The answer is no. Now, how do I know that? Well, it's because I know every one of our revenue sources. There is no weird company with people attached to it whose names we don't know that could be connected to this thing. You know, we talk about we get money from being part of YouTube's partner program. Now, could there be an advertiser on YouTube that is somehow funded by Russia, this, that, and maybe an ad appears on our channel? who the hell knows? But then that means everybody could be on that list. And of course, we have no contact with any YouTube advertisers or anything like it. Similarly, we are part of revenue programs on TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook. We're part of the Amazon affiliate program. If you buy the books I recommend on my website, we may get 50 cents. Or if you buy one of my children's books, like this one that I'm holding up on Amazon, Amazon prints it, they get some money, we get some money. And then this is why I always say, when I say one of the great things about having our biggest revenue source be the membership program is there's no one there who can say, David, you've got to say this, or you'd better say that, or we will pull funding. When we distribute our support across our viewers and listeners, and everybody's giving $2, $3, $4, $7, $20, $30 a month, there's no one person, even though they try. I get emails like this all the time. There's no one person who's going to shift the positions of the show by writing in and saying, David, I don't like what you said about X. I'm going to cancel my $7 a month if you say it again. We just ignore those messages. We are not controlled in that way. I decide and I talk about whatever I want, and I'm completely transparent in the revenue sources. So I am not one of these influencers in any way. Now, there's one other thing I want to say, because this has come up a lot. Tim Pool and others have said, when we were offered what is reportedly $100,000 a week to do some videos for a YouTube channel that gets no views, right? I mean, this Tenet Media YouTube channel was getting statistically close to 0 views. We got 110 million views in the last month, okay? The Tenet Media YouTube channel was, they had in the thousands, tens of thousands, maybe a few 100,000. Tim Pool and others have used the term market value. They've said, when we were offered $100,000 a week, there was no red flag because it was market value. People don't know how much money you can make doing stuff like this. It is not market value. And I'm going to offer to you how to figure it out for yourself. It is open source how many views Dave Rubin's channel gets, Tim Pool's channel gets, and all of these channels. You go on a website called Social Blade, okay? The David Pakman Show YouTube channel currently gets more views than Ben Shapiro's YouTube channel. But forget about subscribers, because what matters is views. We right now get more daily views than Ben Shapiro. He's doing like 2.6 million. We're doing like 3.4 million. Okay. Go look at Dave Rubin's channel's daily views. Go look at Tim Pool's channels, even if you look at his multiple channels, combined daily views. They are a fraction of what we are doing. I've been in many negotiations with these different, let's license some content from you, partners. $100,000 a week for channels of my size is not market value. There is no way in hell that it is an amount that totally normal amount. Of course, that's what they'd be willing to pay. I don't believe that part of it. And you won't believe it when you see that Rubin and Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, they all have dramatically lower views than my YouTube channel. So fact check that yourself. Last thing I'll say, I am so grateful that we don't need to even think about getting involved in any of that stuff because we are supported directly by our audience. So if you value that independence, I would again just say, consider getting a membership at joinpakman.com. You'll know where the money's coming from because it'll be coming from you, period. And really appreciate all of our new and existing members. JD Vance, again, stuck his foot in his mouth, saying that school shootings are just a fact of life. This is after the deadly shooting in Georgia. And he says, it just is. It is.
Now, look, the Kamala Harris answer to this is to take law-abiding American citizens' guns away from them. That is what Kamala Harris wants to do. She says, look, I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door.
So he does his usual, you've got to harden the schools and double up the doors and add a second lock to the window and this entire thing. It's a fact of life, he says, yet no other developed country has this problem. It's not a fact of life in Canada or the UK or Spain or Australia or Hong Kong or, I'm trying to include, or Sweden. I'm trying to include a number of different types of governments, more and less authoritarian, more and less wealthy. It's not a fact of life in any of these places. It's only a fact of life in the types of countries that Trump would often refer to as shithole countries. And these are not the countries that we normally expect Republicans to equate us with. So, as usual, it's all about, I will say whatever I need to say to avoid dealing with the things that really matter here. Number one, put it anywhere in the list, but somewhere on the list, accessibility of firearms. It has to be on the list. Now, I am not so disconnected from reality that I am a get rid of the guns and we totally solve the issue altogether. We have a Second Amendment. We're not going to get rid of all the guns. But in addition to the gun part, we also need to deal with licensing, testing, and mandatory insurance. We also need to deal with the toxic gun culture of the United States, because there are lots of other countries. There are other countries, Switzerland is an example, where guns are more available than in some other countries. But culturally, you don't have as many people who think to themselves, oh, I have a problem. I have an emotional problem. I have a personal problem. I have an employment problem. I have a cultural problem. I'm going to take a gun and try to solve that problem. And so that's a part of it as well. We have a broken culture in this country, and it exists because of this gun culture that the right wing has generated. And I would also include in that mental health. Now, the little caveat with mental health, because Republicans love to say this is only a mental health problem. If you believe that mental health is part of the problem, then you must fully fund access to mental health treatment. And as many of you know, in combination, because of in some areas stigma, in other areas insurance company decisions, all sorts of different things. You need time off for therapy from work. Well, that's going to have to be unpaid. All this different stuff. We're also not even getting the people who say mental health is the primary issue to actually say, well, because we think it's the primary issue, here's how we're going to take it more seriously, make it more acceptable, et cetera. So I include mental health in it for sure, but I'm the one who actually wants to destigmatize mental health, make it more accessible. So JD Vance is disgusting. He's a horrible person. He's failing as a VP, but he's also laughably stupid or blind when he says it is a fact of life when it only seems to be a fact of life in the United States among Western wealthy developed countries. These people are truly disgusting. They must lose in November. Legally, of course. We must defeat them in November with a victory so big that they can't steal it. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today. We will talk about Putin's faux endorsement of Kamala Harris. We will talk about Dick Cheney saying he's voting for Kamala Harris. We will talk about Kamala Harris abandoning her previous suggestion to get rid of plastic straws. And I want to remind you, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, I will be live for the Trump-Harris debate. I hope that you will join me. Make sure you've pre-ordered my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, available at davidpakman.com/echo and everywhere physical books, audiobooks, and ebooks are sold. And of course, remember that all three of my children's books, one on the scientific method, one on critical thinking, one on the importance of voting, they are all available at davidpakman.com/book. They make great stocking stuffers, Hanukkah gifts, everything. All right, I'll see you on the bonus show and then back here tomorrow. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. 8 Sleep makes a product that is amazing, which I love. It's called the Pod, and it fits around your existing mattress and cools down your bed so you can sleep better. They just released the newest model called the Pod 4 Ultra, which in addition to cooling down or heating up your bed, can even lift up your head when you're snoring so you can breathe better. It's incredible. To get $350 off, go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman. The link is in the description.